All right, well, hey, welcome back to Brilliant Fishing. If you saw the title of today's podcast or you recognize the name of our guest from the title that we have today, you know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about catching huge slab crappie. We're going to be talking about tournament-style fishing. We're privileged to have with us today none other than Chris Miller, local guy from Lexington, and he's a top-performing expert tournament crappie fisherman. And he consistently comes out on top in the tournaments that he fishes, not only here locally on High Rock Lake and up and down the Yadkin, but also in some of the larger tournaments across the South. He's very well known. So the cool thing about having Chris with us today, not only is he extremely knowledgeable, has the tournament record to prove it, but he's also super helpful, and he's definitely demonstrated that as he helps people get started in the world of tournament fishing and sharing tips, techniques, and tactics, and so forth. And that brings us to what we're going to talk about today. Chris is going to lend us a helping hand, learning more about targeting these ginormous crappie, Slabosaurus fish. What's the Ed Duke call them? Big Shirleys, Fat Sallies. There's got names for them. Thunder guppies. Whatever you want to call them.
Mossy jaws.
That
was what my dad always said.
So that's what we're going to talk about today, and so that's where we're going to head to tournament style fishing, targeting the big fish. But before we do that, I'd like to welcome Chris. Appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
Why don't you take a little bit of time here and just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got started.
Well, hello, I'm Chris Miller. I run Milroc Crappie Guides here in Lexington, North Carolina, on High Rock Lake and surrounding lakes. Been married 25 years to my beautiful wife, Cassie. Got 3 boys, 25, 22, and 20. All competitive and grew up in the fishing world.
Okay.
Except for my youngest, he only goes when they biting, but he's more of an arcade video style kid, but
Sure.
he does real well.
Okay.
But love everything about it. So
Good. So you crappie fishing from an early age as far as like tournament fishing. I mean,
the tournament side, maybe 2019 on the crappie side.
Okay.
I think I have to go back and look, but
okay.
got involved, got kind of talked into it. Shane Walser and Neil Montgomery saw me on the pier one day and said, "We need to get you into tournament fishing." I said, "Well, I'll try it."
Sure.
So been at it ever since.
Okay. Well, awesome. Yeah, there's a couple good dudes there, Shane and Newell. So, well, let's talk a little bit about. I think we can just jump in and talk about targeting some of these bigger fish, and I'll get us started with a couple questions, and then you just take us where you want to take us. But a lot of us probably watching this, myself included, we kind of weekend crappie fishermen. We go out and hit brush piles. Of course, we're going to catch them when they're shallow in the spring, and we're after. Okay, a lot of us, we just catch crappie. It's a good day. But we're not really into targeting the big crappie. Maybe brush pile fishing, numbers fishing, fill the cooler fishing. But tournament fishing is a little different. Right?
Yeah, I've kind of learned over the years by watching that Livescope. Crappie, it seems like when they get to that 1 3/4 pound range to 2 pound range, they almost start acting like game fish.
Okay.
They start turning into like a bass. They try to act like a bass. You might see 1 or 2 or 3 big ones together, but some of my big fish tournament strategies and wins have come from one fish sitting on one log, one rock, one stump, acting like a bass, even catching a bass beside that crappie. So they start acting a little different. They act a little more game fishy like.
Okay.
And they're not so much. Now they will school up. You have to keep an open mind when you are tournament fishing. You got to decide your poison that you want to jump into. So you can get stuck catching a bunch of fish, and that time go by, and you only got 7-8 hours window to catch those 7 big crappie, and maybe having 1 big crappie, but everybody's getting more competitive now these days. You better have 2 kicker fish instead of 1.
Okay.
So I think that's what you're going to start seeing moving forward is everybody's getting more competitive. Everybody's helping each other. It's getting better. And, those fish seem to act like bass. And so if we wind back up,
Sure.
I was a bass guy. So all these years of fishing points, fishing rocks, fishing this log, this log jam, this stump, this one place where crappie guys don't think where rocks are.
Right.
They're there. They're there. So, and even when they're roaming, I mean, we have 2-3 different styles of crappie living. And, you know, once that water drops, it seems like below 55 degrees, you know, they start coming off that brush and they start roaming. They start fattening up before the winter gets here, before they just start sitting there. So, you know, they love cold water, but they want to try to feed up as much as they can because they don't want to use a lot of energy to eat.
Okay.
So you'll see some of these bigger fish just sitting there waiting on dessert come to them. Okay. So it's kind of wild. There's different steps and different books we can talk about maybe in a later date, but those big fish start acting like bass, I think, in my opinion. And sometimes even watching, or am I around gar? Am I around big catfish? Catfish don't want little bait. They want big bait.
Right.
So if you're around a bunch of catfish or a bunch of gar, I've noticed it may be a bigger crappie hanging around. So it all depends. And then sometimes the bait. You know, if you're around a lot of bait and you can't see, you know, sometimes if that bait's not all busted up, well, they may not be sitting there feeding in that particular area. Okay. You know, you may need to go further back. You may need to hit the mouth of a creek. You know, you need to look where you're starting to see more balls of bait that are being busted up by schools or bigger fish. So something to learn, even by watching side image. You know, that was something that changed the game years ago when side image came out. You had to learn how to read it.
Right.
You know, and I really learned a lot reading side image. I had a flasher back in the day, and I did a lot of speed searching.
We're starting to show our age here.
Yeah. So my first boat had a flasher on it. I didn't even have. I didn't even have I did put an Eagle depth finder on it, but that's still 2D. So it did have GPS though, so if it did fog up like at Blues Creek, I could find my way back to the boat ramp. But it's. I think after I was born '79, so you kind of know my age. You know, I came through the Atari world, the Nintendo world, the Super Nintendo, all those gaming consoles, and I watched MacGyver growing up. Oh yeah. So I learned how to fix things, build things, work on things, and I feel like our generation is that super generation that, you know, we did a lot on our own. We figured it out.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So I take all that and I put it all together as a tournament fisherman.
All right.
Even as guiding too, you know, I use it for guiding as well. And guiding really hasn't helped me to become a better fisherman. Guiding I feel like I get to give back.
Okay.
I feel like I get to give back and help people.
Sure.
Help bass fishermen, help crappie fishermen, help those weekend warriors.
Gotcha.
Pep their game up. You know, so that's one thing I enjoy doing. But yeah, that's learning how to find and stepping out of the zone, stepping out of, there may be a bunch of boats over here that may all be crappie fishing. Yeah, they may be crappie there. That's easy to go pick one or two off, but go find your own fish. Go find your own fish. Go learn to catch your own fish, and I think that'll make you a better fisherman. I feel like I'm proof of the pudding from that perspective. So finding my own fish and catching my own fish has really helped separate me from the pack, I believe.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, yeah. If you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else is getting.
Same results.
For sure. Well, so I think you kind of hit on this already. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say as far as locations. I mean, the big fish sometimes you said they tend to school up. Sometimes they're solitary and they act like bass. I mean, sounds like what you're saying is that for crappie fishermen who's thinking, all right, docks, brush piles, and then maybe in the right time of year, suspended fish. Those are really the areas we're looking. But you're saying maybe different types of structure, logs, rocks.
Don't think just a brush pile. You know, it could be a log jam. You know, it could be a layover. It could be I've caught fish on a big flotilla of trash in the middle of wintertime. Sometimes we have those big floods.
Okay.
And you'll have, especially High Rock, Tillery does it, you'll have these big flotillas, mats of trash, of logs and stumps and all kind of trash out there. There'll be fish hiding under it.
That's crazy.
There'll be fish hiding under it. I call it flotillas.
Like catching a mahi off a weed line.
Yes, exactly. I have
pretty well. I
won
never
tournaments
thought about that.
doing that. So
Really?
learned that on High Rock. Yep.
Huh.
All from trial and
I
error.
would have thought. I would have. So my first thought, I'd see all that trash, and I'd be like, no.
Now that's wintertime fishing.
Okay.
So
because they're suspended.
yeah, but also I have found summertime fishing. Just the other day, Sunday, when I was out there, I saw one log sitting kind of diagonally. The shade was on this side of it. Well, they were about 6 of them sitting on that one side on that log. Well, I went back Sunday morning to put my customers on it, and only one was on there.
Okay.
And I saw a mayfly hatch. I think they all got off that log and started feeding overnight, and were up shallow on the bank. Found a few fish shallows, pointed my boat more toward the shallow waters, and we started picking up a few more fish.
Really? That's pretty cool.
Open mind.
Yeah.
Open mind.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, a lot of times as fishermen, we just fish with, what worked last time or what we saw work for somebody else, and just not willing to take the risk when we get out there in the water to try something new.
I got a couple vendors that help me. One of them's Jake's Baits, and Jacob does a great job building me some baits that are kind of out of the box, that are weird, that are different, and things that I see. And I fillet fish. I like to eat fish. I like to clean fish, and
Sure.
I don't do a whole bunch of fish. I've kind of slowed down on that side, but I like catching about 10, cleaning those fish, and we'll eat those fish. But as I clean them, I open their guts up. I want to see what they've been feeding on.
Right.
And that my customer, he had asked me to clean the fish for him. Every single one of them was filled with mayflies, packed full. Where do the mayflies live? Where are they at?
Yeah.
They're on the surface. Those fish came up and ate overnight on the surface. Those things didn't sink and fall. They ate them as they hit the water, like a brim during the day. So they move, they look, they want to feed, and I haven't figured out how to catch topwater crappie yet, but
I'm sure there's a way.
I will be trying soon. So
If they eat mayflies, they have to be eating something up near the surface.
that's it.
Yeah, I mean, they're opportunistic feeders.
They're aggressive.
Yeah.
They're aggressive, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they sit there and stare at you, and there's been times where I just want to throw my Livescope in the water. I've seen it and I wanted to do it, but I knew what it can do for me. And but yeah, sometimes some of these big fish. For instance, I'll talk about the time when I was fishing the Yadkin River Crappie Classic down on Baden, and I just had a tournament 2 or 3 weeks before, and I did poorly in that tournament. It's one of the worst tournaments I ever had, and I decided the day before the tournament I'm not going to hit none of my old spots.
Okay.
I hit all new spots,
Okay.
and it worked out for me.
Okay.
So it's and also it told me, wow, you need to try and poke, look and see and test your boundaries. Help yourself get better. And that's what it kind of helped. And I'll never forget, I had came up on another team and we were talking, and it was Newly Montgomery and Sean McAbee, and they said, Chris, you doing any good? I said, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I said, man, I got a killer bag. Well, what you got? I got 1536. And he said, well, we got 1536. I said, what? And I was like, holy cow. I had one fish I knew I had to get rid of. And we only had 30, 45 minutes. So I jumped on plane, went to my big fish spot, and looked for another 15 minutes, and I found it, and I put it in the boat, and I coiled my 198, gave me all 2-pounders, and I edged them out barely at the end of the day.
Oh,
So,
wow.
It's crazy.
That's awesome.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, so you talked a little bit about, I think we sort of touched on the bait area, thinking outside the box. I mean, do you notice anything about like what works good for these big fish? I mean, you're not throwing the same thing you throw for the small ones, right?
Yes. So I'll either downsize or I'll upsize. It just depends on what the fish before told me. But if I get a fish that just doesn't bite it and I knew it was a good fish, I'd switch. And I tell you, one of my secrets is, and I've had a couple buddies taught me this a long time ago, bass fishing and striper fishing, is if you catch a small fish, take that hair jig, take that fish that's in your live well, pick it up, rub that hair jig on the side of that fish. Get that slime on that hair jig. And you'll see me, people think I'm crazy, but I'll take that thing and I'll whip it around real fast and I'll dry that slime on that fish so it doesn't fall off as soon as I throw it in the water. It doesn't get washed off. And sometimes it will get me a bite.
You know, that sounds crazy. But at the same time, and I know you've seen this happen before too, probably, is, you know, you maybe like long line trolling, let's just say. You fishing several different kind of baits. Let's say you got 2 or 3 out that's the same jig, same you know, bait, and you get a hit on one, and you know, you put it back out. You'll keep getting a hit on that one.
On that one black and pink.
On that, just like it.
On that one John Deere green. That one John Deere green. That one John Deere green.
Exactly, and it's the exact same as the one right beside it, but that one's got smell on it. And smells like a fish.
I do. You know, I've had people say that, you know, the Crappie niblets or the I think they call them the fireballs, the Potonskis, I think is what they call them, the fireballs. They work. I really feel like they work at certain situations, but I'll tell you right now, haven't really had to use many of them to catch a big fish, other than if I'm practicing. Sometimes if I'm practicing, I may try some of this stuff. But a lot of times I'll go with what worked for me during the tournament. And if it worked for me last year and I had over 2 pounds, I'm going to go with the same thing. And I like throwing a hair jig. I like throwing some big plastics. There is some bass 3-inch swim baits I use, some Kitex, you know, some crazy stuff that I learned bass fishing, some Z-Man swim baits, you know, some crazy stuff. And then Jake's baits, you know, I've had him make me some little bit bigger baits that have a paddle tail on them, and you know, I'll get a little bit better reaction in the water when I see it swimming through. So if it doesn't take a lot to move that bait, then it's not going to take a lot to move it behind the boat or in the water. So I like a real soft, right consistency jig that'll give me good movement in the water.
So, good action. Because you're normally doing you're trying to slow that bait down when you're presenting it, aren't you?
So I'll tell you another one of my secrets. I use 20-pound leaders.
Yeah, that's a lot of pounds.
For crappie, yes.
Man.
But I'm using I use a braid. I use K9 10-pound braid.
Right.
And you know, I'll do a double uni knot with about a 2.5 liter, sometimes 3. But that big diameter line gives my 1/16, 1/32 jig a slow fall.
Right.
Now my slow fall may be slower than this guy's 8-pound leader. So that's less resistance in the water. So my jig with the 20-pound will fall real slow.
Right.
But it depends on the water clarity. So if I'm fishing baiting, I may only use 15-pound because the water's clear. Those fish are more sensitive to that clear water. High rock, not so much. Y'all know high rock's mud rock. So it can stay dirty and green and nasty all the time. So I get away with 20-pound a lot further than I would in other lakes.
Now, are you saying mono or fluoro?
I use both, so it just depends. If I'm looking for, if the bite is funny, if they're really lethargic, if they're really sensitive, they're not biting real well, you know, I will use a fluoro because the fluoro, no stretch. You get a real sensitive bite. If I'm using mono, which mono floats pretty good, you know, you get a little stretch. So and if the bite's awesome, I'll just tie some mono on. I'm not really worried about it. But if it's a clear lake, I'll downsize and come down to 15, 12-pound fluorocarbon. So.
Okay. So you're using that. You're slowing down your presentation. You're wanting to, like, cause now I've seen you like doing the video with Tyler where you're out on the water and fishing, and you know, you're using your Livescope. You're finding that what looks like a big fish, you know, and you're kind of sizing it up, you know, using the graph
with the grids,
and then you're pitching that jig and you're trying to get it to float down and basically stay near that fish, sort of in the strike zone as
I
long as
like.
possible?
It depends on the day and the weather and the temp and everything, but in the wintertime, they're not so sensitive. You can throw one about 3-4 feet out in front of it and get that slow fall. But I like that bait coming down toward the fish where it's like a regular live bait swimming right over top of the fish. And I don't like bringing it right into the fish because everybody does that. I like bringing mine right above the fish because the eyes of a crappie are on top of his head. They like to see up. They like to follow that bait, and they'll turn around and they'll hit that bait. It depends on the action and the body language of the fish, and that's something sometimes I can't really teach unless you're in the boat with me. But if that bait turns that fish and he turns and he looks up at it, he comes up to it, you know, a lot of people want to bounce it, flip it, kick it, whatever. I reel real slow. I keep reeling slow until I feel a bite, or if I see my actual jig disappear into that fish. Sometimes you don't feel the bite. Well, what did they teach you on the baseball team if it's a strike? Swing. Well, guess what I'm doing?
You're setting that hook.
I'm setting the hook. He may have it and spit it out before I even set the hook. And about 50% of my big fish that I've caught and won big fish in tournaments have come that way.
Okay. Really? Like
don't be afraid
to.
I don't even feel the bite. Just set the hook and it's in there.
Just give him a big old Bill Dance jerk.
And then sometimes they come at it so hard they hit it, they bring the bait to you. So there is no pull. There is no rubber band. There's no pull. There's no. You don't feel that. They just bring it right at you, and you just watch your line. You see slack. Set the hook.
Okay.
And I set it pretty hard. You know, I come from the bass world. You know, I rip lips, I rip stumps, piers, rocks out of the water. So I don't mind breaking a rod. So, but it's a big fish. You know, they're bigger. They're not as small. They don't have as of a papery mouth. So I like using those moxie jigs heads and just setting them, burying them deep in those jigs in their mouth. So.
Okay.
And in a tournament, I always net my fish. I never boat flip them.
Okay.
I boat flip them in practice. I boat flip them on trips, but I never ever boat flip a fish when I'm in a tournament.
Yeah, that'd be a heartbreaking lesson to learn, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about with these, especially these big fish, the stealth factor.
Yeah.
Like these things are, I hear they're hard to catch because they're real boat shy.
Yep. You want me to explain?
Tell me all about it.
So it all depends on your boat control.
Okay.
Boat control is key, and I think in the bass world, you know, back when I was fishing for fish on beds, you know, on shallow structure, you know, I would back off even when I was to pull up to one of my spots that I knew a big fish was going to be at, or had an idea I caught big fish there before, I backed the boat up. I come off plane 100 yards before I get there.
Okay.
Most bass fishing, most crappie fishing pull right up on it on plane. Well, they're used to hearing that. They know, something's about to happen. I'm about to get some food, and my brother's about to leave me. Or my sister or my mama's gone. Yeah. So I really think fish are smart. I think these days are getting smarter. They've evolved. But in what I like to do is back off the fish early, ease up to them with trolling motor, and I may come up to them with the wind behind me, so the ripple of the water is not making my boat slap on the water. Okay. I don't like boat slap. I'm a big boat slap fanatic. I will control my boat, where I won't have boat slap, and I'll make a further cast or flip or pitch than most folks I think do. Okay. You know, if I see a big fish out there 50 feet, 60 feet, I may make a flip at 60 feet and that fish be 40 feet. Okay. So I may make some longer flips and pitches than what most people are just going to, we call it dead sticking, where they'll just hold a 13, 16, 17 foot rod 15, 14 foot away from the fish, you know, because you're only that far away from that fish. So you have to be ultra stealthy when you're doing that. But I really back things up. I slow things down. I present my bait the first cast. And I'll tell you what I also do. When I make that pitch out there on that fish, and he's 50 foot out, and I make a 60-foot pitch, if I don't see my splash and my fish at the same time, I do not let that bait go down there to it. I'll reel it back in, because that you will pressure that fish. And if you get pressure on that fish, he's not going to bite the first flip.
Okay.
So a lot of times I try to make the perfect flip, the first pitch, the first cast. And if I get it, I get that bite and that reaction strike a lot faster than I think what most folks would get for a big fish.
So if that thing's out there 50, 60 feet, I mean, your transducer beam is probably how wide? I mean, that thing's...
Well, you know, I think it's a 6-degree angle. So, I mean, yeah, it does get out there wider, but I'm trying to make sure that I am seeing that same brightness and that same brightness of that fish at the same time before I let it come down there to it.
Because if you're seeing the fish bright and you're seeing the splash bright, you know they're lined up.
Yeah.
You're not left or right 3 feet or whatever.
And I don't like, you know, I'll thank Coleman Monday for this, but he switched me over to a 0-degree mount. A 0-degree mount means if that fish is right here and your bait hits right here, well, guess what? You're right on it. If it's a 8-degree mount and your fish is down here, and your bait hits here and that fish is over here, then when you let that fall, you're going to see that fall right through here. And I've heard it 1,000 times. Chris, after 10 feet, I lose my bait. Well, it's because it's on an 8-degree angle. You should have threw 3 foot to the right to bring it down to where the degree hits it.
Okay.
But that's me. That's my hypotenuse. So
I like that thinking. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So being stealthy is backing the boat up, making a little bit further cast, making sure it's a one pitch, one flip on that big fish. That's key. I think crappie are a little more sensitive sometimes. They don't come up and hit topwater baits like a bass, even though they feed at night on topwater. So I think that helps me get a little bit better edge catching some bigger fish sometimes in these tournaments. I do think a lot of folks do come across big fish, they just don't get the bites. I do think I've seen it. I've heard people at the weigh-ins, oh, I saw a big fish, Well, you know, seeing big fish and catching big fish, that's two different things, you know. So you got to be successful, you got to get these big fish to bite. So, you know, like we were talking before, making a little bit further pitch, you know, being a little more stealthier. Don't drop, if you're dead sticking fish, don't just drop it straight down there on the fish and stop it. Bring it down to the fish, stay about 2 foot away, maybe put it in front of the fish, and then bring it to the fish as a natural bait fish will come to a big fish, and you'll get a reaction strike. Now, if I don't get a bite on that first right here movement, a lot of times I will put it right at their face and get it right at them and see if I can get a reaction strike. Know a bunch of you seen it. They'll come to it and they'll flip on around. That's a pressure fish. I may give him 2-3 more flips, pitches. If he don't bite it, I'll move on to another fish. So,
okay. Yeah, that was going to be another question I had. So you're not spending an endless amount of time on one fish. If he's not interested or she's not interested, you move on. I'm
moving on. I'll go find another fish that's ready to bite. Yeah. There's millions of crappies in these lakes, and there's a lot of big fish. And you know, this one here may have just had breakfast, and this one hadn't had breakfast yet. So I want to give that one opportunity to the sausage and eggs and gravy. So
sure, yeah, that's true. So I think we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of really good stuff there. What about? Let me just throw this up, see what you think about this. Things that anglers maybe often miss. Like, I know we've talked about some things like boat control. These fish are noise sensitive. You know, that kind of stuff. Is there anything else that you can kind of think of in that department?
I will talk about speed.
Okay.
It's you don't really need it for if you're fun fishing, but if you are tournament fishing, speed is going to play a role that day. And anything from getting the boat in the right position, weighing your fish, tagging your fish, having everything ready on the boat before you take off. A lot of times once I get to my first spot, I make sure all my tail coil tags are from 1 to 7. I make sure I got a backup set of batteries ready for my Bubba scales. I make sure my net's out. I make sure all the 3 rods I got out are ready to roll. Each one fresh knots, fresh lures, fresh everything. Having everything prepped before you get there, because I believe in what Mike Iaconelli preaches, and he talks about the 5 P's. Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
Okay.
So I really believe in it. I'm a salesman. I sell a lot. I do a lot of sales. I teach sales, and I've always been I like fundamentals, and I bring those fundamentals to my tournament game. So it really
makes a lot of sense.
Really helps me. And if there's something else that I would think that other, even on the fun side, weekend warriors that may not think about, is make sure you're having fun. Make sure you're having fun. Don't let it get to you if you didn't catch a big fish that day, or you didn't catch a bunch of fish. Guess what? That just leaves the opportunity for you to go catch fish another day.
Right.
Don't get frustrated. Keep an open mind. Watch Jason Brilliant's videos. Learn as much as you can.
Yeah,
because
watch those.
if you want to know what I do a lot of, is I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I mean, I do, and it helps
helpful.
me.
I call it YouTube University.
I tell you the biggest one that you need to really watch, and I watch his post. He posts almost every day, and that's Tony.
Tony Sharon.
Yeah, he posts the best. Some of the tournaments that I've won is because of him, because it's free, it's online. Any kind of information is online. It's free for all games. So if you're not a friend of his, or if you're not watching his pages, make sure you're watching it. He's going to tell you water temp. He's going to tell you water level. He's going to tell you a lot about the Yadkin River chain, which is where a lot of us are fishing and breathing. And it's great information, and it's basic fundamentals to start your fishing. So that helps me a lot.
Yeah, that's what's so cool. I mean, like, Tony's not a tournament fisherman, but he is out on the lake every day.
Oh, yes.
And he is posting, like you said, everything from water condition, the flow, I mean, all that stuff. And, if you kind of know what you're doing halfway, you can take his information, apply it to your situation, and it's going to be helpful.
I'll tell you one more other thing about tournament fishing, too, is don't be afraid to go back, and we call it a milk run. And I learned that from my old partner, Kevin Blevins. He's a heck of a fisherman, unbelievable guy. But if you not having, your day's getting worse and worse and worse, and you caught fish here at this one spot that day, don't be afraid to go back to it. We call it a milk run. You may pick up that 1 or 2 that may move the needle, that gives you that, tenth of an ounce, half a pound, whatever it is, to get you into the money. Or into a better spot in the position board. So you're saying circling back to a spot that earlier in the day wasn't productive? Okay. That too. You can do that too. Yep. Or go to a spot that was successful, that you've let rest and come back to. We did that Sunday. We had a couple brush of logs, and I could tell they were just coming and looking at it, running back down. Well, let's go try another spot. We come back to that spot an hour later, and we picked up 4 more fish.
Really?
That were those fish move around in piles, so the fish are on the bottom may come to the top. But they may have been the one that went up there and not hit it, come back to the bottom and move the rest of the fish up. And then some of those fish may be active, and they may hit your bait the second time around. Milk run.
A milk run. I like that. Okay. So I think we've talked about bait, tackle, presentation. We've talked about stealth, boat noise. Anything specific to like Livescoping? I know you've done videos before. I've seen you. And I know I've talked to you personally about Livescope settings, because it's a great piece of technology, but kind of hard to figure out. Anything you want to share in that aspect?
Don't be afraid to call or ask somebody, hey, do I got this right? Is this thing lined up right? Is this, how far do I need it under the water? What do I need to hook it up to? Don't be afraid to ask somebody. I've been to plenty of boats where guys throwed them on there and they just slapped them on, and they got this one cord pinched, or they got this thing hooked up to all these other electronics, or they don't have something right. And, be very careful of that transducer cord because it's sensitive. And I still believe that all these transducers, these Garmin's, the Lowrances, all of them, especially Garmin, there's, I don't know, 30, 40 wires in that cord. Every one of them aren't exactly the same. So I've been in some boats where one looks a little different than another. So you need to find out and make changes and movements where is it going to pick up the best? Is this going to work the best for this boat? Is it going to work the best for this trolling motor, this transducer? So just don't be afraid to ask. There's plenty of pages on Facebook and YouTube channels, and even here, don't be afraid. There'll be information at the bottom of the screen. Call it. I love helping people. So, if you got questions about how yours is set up, don't be afraid to give us a call. We can help you. So it's if there was one other thing, figure out what setup works best for your boat too. And I mean by like where your screen should be, where your mount should be, where is it going to be the easiest for you, and are you going to put your transducer on your trolling motor, or are you going to have it on a separate rod, a separate pole? 50% of the people that I meet and they're brush pile fishermen, so the pole is going to be perfect for them. And then having your spot lock on, you just forget it and just keep your pole on that brush pile and keep throwing over at it.
Right.
And don't be afraid to use old school buoys. I still use buoys. I still use a barker buoy, and I throw it out there, and right there's a brush pile, but I don't throw it on top of the brush pile. I throw it about 10 yards past it, and then making sure I'm lining myself upright for that brush pile. So I still use them. I keep about 6 of them in the boat.
Yeah, those are super helpful. Yeah, it is one thing that I've noticed is really hard about fishing any kind of submerged structure. Is you get out on the water, and if you're not close to some sort of landmark to help you line it up, it's real easy to get disoriented. You move a little bit. Oh, I thought it was here. No, it's like 10 feet over here. And so those are a lifesaver.
If you catch a fish, you turn your back. You take it off the fish, you take the hook out, you put it in the live well, the wind's blowing 5 mile an hour, you got boat traffic, you turn back around, whoa, I've already moved 25 yards.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to use spot lock if you got it. That's the best tool out there.
I do like the spot lock for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything else maybe I haven't set you up to talk about today that you think would be useful or interesting or helpful? Or?
I would say testing new waters.
Okay.
I really like pushing myself and my limits.
Okay.
I'm not afraid to go to a new lake. I'm not afraid to go to a new place I've never been to, or even a new part of the lake. Okay. If there's something that if you want to get better at, go push yourself to the limit. Go to a new spot. You may not catch nothing. You may not be successful, but you may find something new. A new pier, a new spot, a new point, a new lake. Go hit them and see if you can't, broaden your horizons and see if you can't help yourself get a little better. I think that's one thing that's really helped me over the years is trying new lakes and just popping up at a lake I've never been to and just seeing what I could do.
Yeah.
So
I think that's good. It helps you to see, like, take your skill set, take it to a new environment and see, okay, is there something else that I can learn here?
Yep.
Something that I can apply from where I was, and also, like, is there something I can take back because this worked in this environment? Can I take it back?
Yes.
That's good.
Yep.
Well, so we'll end with this. So if somebody wants to get in contact with you, they want to ask you questions, they want to book a guide trip, because you do guided trips. So, like, what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
Facebook Messenger works pretty good. Of course, call me on my cell, 336-309-9835. And sometimes my wife, she watches my Facebook Messenger, and I have 2 pages, and I'm a techie guy, but I got a lot going on at one time. I don't always see every message that comes through on Facebook Messenger, but don't be afraid to give a shout out to her, and she'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's what I like about our lives. They keep us straight.
Yes. Actually, she done that today. Have you contacted that guy? I'm like, yes, babe. I got it. But yeah, those are the two best ways I think to get me. And of course, word of mouth. I'm always on High Rock. I meet a lot of people on High Rock, Baden, Tillery, Tuckertown. Different lakes, and if you run into me, of course, I'm going to give you my name and number and call me anytime. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that about you. I appreciate you being helpful and sharing knowledge with us. And I think that's a good testament to to you as a person and just to our fishing community. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of guys out here. If you're just willing to ask questions, I know like Chris is a good resource. Shane talked to before. Tony. There's a wealth of information and help out there. These guys might not give you the exact spot to go fish, but they're going to help you to be successful. In some cases, they might even give you the spot to go fish. But
I will say, if you just come fish a tournament. Come fish. There's a couple tournaments that Clayton Nudie puts on. I think it's High Rock Crappie Club.
Oh, right.
It's a little,
night.
Yeah, a little. I think it's $25. You come. Who knows? You may see me there, and I'll help you as much as I can.
Yeah.
I think fishing a tournament, you'll learn so much more, even though you may not have been successful during the day at the tournament weigh-in or at the tournament. Before the tournament starts, we're there to help you. And that's one good thing that it can help too.
Yeah, that's some good information. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure.
Yep.
Glad to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Again, don't forget to go check out Chris. Check out his Facebook page. Give him a call if you want to book a guide trip. Ask him questions. We appreciate you watching Brilliant Fishing. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, we have a audio podcast format that we've rolled out recently. So if you prefer that, like you're just driving down the road, you're going to work, on a trip with the family, pull us up on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. All of those platforms were available there in an audio format as well. So with that being said, we're going to sign off. Happy fishing.